I am an artist. I've tattooed professionally in Nashville and other parts of Tennessee for a number of years. I love to draw and illustrate much more than I do tattoo, and some of my work can be seen in an art gallery in Port Townsend, Washington, the Red Dragonfly. And I've done some underground comic book work, illustrating for a place in Seattle, a small comic book publisher called Thunder Frog Studios. I was raised lower middle class by a single mother. I have a brother and a sister. Was born in 1980. I was raised in Middle Tennessee, a little town called Fairview, which at the time didn't even have red lights. Um, a lot of uh, the religious figures around me as a child were, in fact, Southern Baptist. My great grandfather on my dad's side was a preacher. However, I was raised by my mother's side of the family, and my grandfather, I'm very proud to say, was self made, started off in extreme poverty, and worked his way up to doing draft for the Nashville Bridge Company. I was a troubled teen. I had some terrible misfortunes as a very young child, and had some behavioral problems. I won't go into detail, but I've had a pretty rough life. I've lived through some pretty serious situations. I've gone hungry. I've had to defend myself in some really sketchy situations. And you know, it's not a crutch. It's not something that I glorify either. Just something that I I'm glad that I have the experience in. Know how to handle myself. As far back as I can remember, I've always believed in God. It's something I've always felt within. I was not forced into religion. The people who raised me, my mother and her parents, um, they were in fact religious people. They had faith in God. They weren't big church people, but I had relatives. My grandmother's sister was a big part of the church, which was right down the road from where I grew up. I remember as a child going to vacation Bible school. I've been drawing and doing art since I was old enough to crawl. Um, People would consider the way I was raised in severe poverty. My mother was struggling to raise three children. I know that it was hard on her, and that's not something a person ever forgets. A lot of my early work was darker, and a lot of it still is. But I've never done anything or had an interest in doing anything satanic or particularly sacrilegious. In fact, I took a pretty big interest in biblical art somewhere in my mid to late 20s, where I studied and adored the Renaissance era of art, the paintings and the sketches, murals and the sculptures, particularly Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. There's countless others that I still adore to this day. I personally don't go to church. I have a pretty strong relationship with God. I find in my studies that Jesus taught that He was the way to God. But I think there's a lot of good churchgoers out there, and a lot of good churches. I support people in their decision to attend church, and the older I get, the more I spend of my personal time studying my faith, and the more of my art that I devote to it.